Hello citizens, this is Councilor Gian-Carlo, Ward 9 TV, and this is a special edition for my friends and neighbors in Renfrew. So this is regarding a special care facility that's proposed at 802 7th Avenue Northeast. The history on this file is that a year or two ago, Council passed a land use with the support of the community to allow a former nunnery to become a special care facility looking after Alzheimer's patients. For whatever reason, the business deal with the Alzheimer's group fell apart, and the landlord has been trying to find an appropriate tenant for this special care facility that they developed with Alzheimer's patients in mind. It's been lying empty for a while, and it's become a little bit of an issue for the landlord, and stepping into the opportunity is a group called EHN, the Edgewood Health Network. Now, this is a national body that works on addiction treatment and other mental health related stuff. They've got a very good reputation, and they run some fairly large facilities in other parts of the country. And if you're a middle-class person who all of a sudden finds yourself or a loved one dealing with an addiction problem, EHN is one of the go-to groups. They recognize that Calgary is underserved in that demographic for this kind of addiction treatment, and they've stepped in and they've suggested that this is a great facility to dip their toe into the Calgary market. It sounds okay, but there are concerns that have been raised by members of the Renfrew community, and so we wanted to go through an appropriate process to vet whether this was okay or not. Now, here's the history. The EHN and the proponent, the owners of the site, proposed to hold an open house on March 25th to address community concerns. The problem with March 25th is that it was spring break. I wasn't going to be able to attend, and my concern was that people who have legitimate concerns and are out of town would feel that this wasn't an appropriate time. And so I met with the proponents at the Community Association, with the members of the Community Association on March 21st, and one of the first things that we agreed to was that there would have to be a second, outside of the holiday period, open house, and the date for that was set on Sunday, April 14th, which is last week from when I'm filming right now. I had the opportunity of attending that. I also had the opportunity several days before to meet with the Friends of Renfrew, which is a group that's come together to express concerns. As I understand it, the March 25th open house was a little bit raucous. Concerns were raised, some legitimate, some not legitimate, some actually, frankly, verging into distasteful. One of EHN's major clientele groups are law enforcement and military personnel who are suffering with addiction, and they had some, people there who are from those lines of work wearing full uniforms, and apparently they were accused of not actually being who they said they were, which I find really distasteful. Addiction is something that affects every family in some capacity, every neighbor group, every group of friends, and we have to have the ability to address it in a good way. And EHN, does an amazing job as we've learned at solving and addressing these problems. So on March 14th, I had the opportunity to stand in a crowded room at the Renfrew Community Association Hall and listen to concerns and speak to what I thought, and to listen to neighbors and ask questions of EHN. I was on my feet for like 4 hours straight, talking nonstop, and I came to a series of conclusions. Number one, this is not an illegitimate use. This is actually a very necessary use, and it's not a danger to the neighborhood writ large. There are some challenges, and those challenges need to be addressed, and EHN has agreed to working through a good neighbor agreement with the Community Association. Now, I've been involved in my 18 years of public service with a number of good neighbor agreements, and I've never had a problem with them. They actually solve a lot of problems. Some people are concerned that they don't have teeth. I've never found them to be an issue. Here are the three big issues that I want a good neighbor agreement to address. Number one, while traffic and deliveries are going to be minor concerns for this site, where the staff parks is a legitimate question, and figuring out the best place for the staff to park. If it's a couple blocks away and they walk through the neighborhood during shift change and stuff like that, that's the kind of thing that a good neighbor agreement can address and can actually solve a lot of problems. Number two, I think the immediate neighbor has a legitimate concern if the clientele are in a very closed outdoor space right next to the neighbor's deck smoking. I think that needs to be addressed through a good neighbor agreement, and protocols can be put in place so that smoking clientele, when they go outside, we're not negatively impacting their neighbors' lives. And then the final issue, and it's not clear to me whether this will be a good neighbor agreement or enacted through some other mechanism, any special service provider that takes up residence in this house has to be vetted to make sure that they are actually who they say they are, that there's protocols in place, that ideally there's a good neighbor agreement in place. And so we're looking to figure out how we will lapse the approval for this site if EHN leaves and another group comes in. And so we can put that new group, that new potential group, through the ringer 5 years from now when the EHN lease expires, if they choose not to renew. To review, I don't have the power to say yes or no to this. I only have the power to influence, so I've kept my powder dry. I've learned about it. My feeling is very clearly that this is a necessary use writ large. It is a minor impact. It will fade away with regard to the rest of the neighborhood. And there are a couple of things that we need to address: parking, smoking, and what happens when EHN leaves. Outside of that, I think that we deserve, Renfrew should be welcoming this necessary use in, because it's something that touches all of our lives. With that, thank you so much. Don't hesitate to contact my office if you have any questions.